Hello, and welcome to Coffee with Jesus. I am your host, Todd Ubley. In this episode, I would like to talk about how to maintain our hope when the circumstances that require hope feel like they'll never end. I know right now the world is in a pretty bad way, and some of the things that I'll be mentioning in this episode, they've been going on for a year and a half, 2 years. Recently, I tested positive for COVID, and I was symptomatic. COVID is a pandemic that started 2.5 years ago, and it seems like now it has become endemic instead of a pandemic. We've been experiencing food shortages for 6 months, and word is that they're only going to get worse. Inflation is still skyrocketing. Prices are increasing at astronomical rates. And while July was slightly less astronomical than June, we're still at 40-year highs. We have not seen this rate of inflation since the late 70s, early 80s. And it seems like there's no relief in sight. How then can we maintain that hope? How can we keep having hope when having hope is hard? In this episode, I'm going to share how we can maintain that hope, how we can keep hope alive when having hope is hard. And I'm going to share a little bit about my experience with COVID, and then try to relate my own small little microcosm to what is happening in the world as a whole. Now, I understand that when it comes to COVID, there's a lot of strong feelings all around. And I also know that when it comes to COVID, different people will experience different symptoms. Some people will test positive and they will have no symptoms at all. And yet, there are so many people who have caught it and have died as a result. Most people, it's like the cold or the flu, or maybe a really bad case of the flu or a really bad cold. For me in particular, it was very similar to experiencing the flu. And at first, I was convinced that I had had the flu. I did take an at-home test, and the results were negative. So I figured that my fever and my congestion and the sensitivity for my skin, the headaches, all that stuff, I assumed it was the flu, because to me, that's what I feel when I have the flu. Well, a few days later, when I had to let my work know that I was sick, they wanted me to get a test at a clinic. Now, I had mentioned that I took an at-home test and that it was negative, but they still wanted me to get a test at a clinic. So I did, and that test came back positive. Now, ironically, by this point, most of my symptoms had cleared up. I was actually starting to feel a little bit better when I had tested positive. However, there are a few symptoms that seemed to hang on. For example, I had a really, really bad sore throat and earache in both ears. It literally felt like my throat and my ears were on fire. I remember at one point I made myself a small sandwich for lunch. I got about halfway through and I had to stop eating. I had to put the sandwich away. It hurt so bad just to swallow a small bite from that sandwich because my throat was so sore. I literally could not eat. I could not swallow. Even drinking water hurt really, really badly. And folks, I prayed hard. God, please heal my throat. God, please take away the pain that I'm feeling in my throat and in my ears. The next day, I woke up and my throat was still really sore and my ears were still aching. Well, again, I prayed, God, please heal my throat. Help my throat to get better. And that night, I took NyQuil before I went to bed. And then about 2 hours later, I woke up and I took Sudafed. I was doing everything I could to just clear my head of all the congestion. Next morning, I woke up and again, my throat felt like it was on fire. But only one ear hurt. I know this seems a little weird, but on the one side, the earache had actually gone away. So I was still having a sore throat. My throat still felt like it was on fire. And I still had trouble eating. I couldn't swallow because it hurt so bad. I could barely even drink water because it hurt so bad. I tried some chloroseptic throat spray. Didn't even put a dent in the pain that I was feeling. And folks, Western medicine was failing me. And every day I would pray, God, please make this pain go away. Please take this pain from me. Heal my throat. And every day I would wake up like my throat was on fire. It felt like it was never going to end. When I had tested positive for COVID, my job quarantined me. They told me to stay home for so many days. Even after that quarantine was over, I still stayed home because my throat was still hurting. How do you maintain hope when you're in so much pain and when it feels like God's not answering your prayers, when you're asking God for help and it seems like the pain just won't go away, it won't stop? What do you do? Well, what I did, folks, is I kept praying. Every day when I woke up, I would pray, God, please heal my throat. And the next day when I woke up and my throat was still sore, I said, God, please heal my throat. And here's the thing, my throat felt like it was on fire for days. But one day I woke up and my throat was still sore and my ear was still a little sore, but I didn't have that same burning, can't even swallow water type of intense flame feeling back in the back of my throat. So there was some improvement. And that, folks, let me know, okay, I'm starting to get better. I still hurt, but at least now I can drink water. I can take a throat drop and then I can eat. And green tea with honey worked wonders. So folks, the very first thing I did was to continue to pray. I kept praying. When things were dark, when things were painful, I kept praying. I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I didn't stop. And there's actually a parable that I would like to read here where Jesus talks about this very thing. Folks, this is the parable of the persistent widow, and it comes from Luke chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. I'm reading from the English Standard Version. And he told them a parable to the effect that they ought always to pray and not lose heart. He said, in a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor respected man. And there was a widow in that city who kept coming to him and saying, give me justice against my adversary. For a while he refused, but afterward he said to himself, though I neither fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will give her justice, so that she will not beat me down by her continual coming. And the Lord said, hear what the unrighteous judge says. And will not God give justice to his elect, who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long over them? I tell you, he will give justice to them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? Folks, the ordeal with my sore throat and my earaches lasted less than a week, but it felt like an eternity. And when you're going through those dark periods, when you're experiencing either that physical pain or that emotional pain, or when you are going through a storm and it seems like life will just never let up, it can feel like an eternity. I would very much like to encourage you, just like this woman who kept going to the judge, keep going to God. Don't stop praying. I prayed every day, even when I woke up and my throat still hurt. I didn't say, God, what's the deal? What are you doing here? No. Folks, I prayed again. And the next morning when my throat still hurt, I prayed again. And I kept praying. And eventually, I noticed there was a bit of an improvement. And this little bit of an improvement helped give me hope. It let me know that relief was, in fact, on the way. Even though I had a sore throat and an earache for a few more days, I could see the improvement every single day. And that's the second thing I would like to point out. The first thing, and of course the most important, is to keep praying. The second thing, look for the improvement where you can see it. let's take a current situation in the world. At least here in the United States, there are shortages in the store. As I'm recording this, my wife is actually at the grocery store and she's texting me about things that are just missing from the shelves. In the US, the economy appears to be entering a recession. The GDP is shrinking. Major companies are announcing layoffs or hiring freezes, and often hiring freezes can precede layoffs. Inflation is still climbing at astronomical rates. But folks, there's been some relief. If you look at the gas stations, prices are starting to come down. Now, I understand that per gallon in the US, gas prices are still $1 to $2 higher than they were 18 months ago. But again, just like when I woke up, my throat wasn't on fire, but it was still sore. There was that little bit of improvement. And right now, at least at the pump, we have that little bit of improvement. Gas prices are down from their peak. So there is that little bit of relief that's starting. Now, that doesn't mean that things are going to be better overnight, because I had a sore throat for a few more days, even when it wasn't on fire, even though I could drink and eat without wincing. And folks, for a little while, I couldn't even eat, period. I couldn't swallow. So even though my throat was still sore, there was that improvement where I could now swallow. I could now have a cup of green tea with some honey in it, and that would give me some relief, whereas a few days prior, nothing would provide relief at all. So, the first thing is to keep praying. Never give up. Never stop praying. The second thing is to recognize when there is an improvement, even if it's small, even if it's a little thing. Recognize that there is an improvement and that things are going to get better. The third thing is to try to picture the outcome. I realize that when you are in the middle of a storm, it is very difficult to picture the sun coming out. It is very difficult to picture the rain stopping and the sunshine and the warmth filling the air. But every storm does end. Some last 15 minutes, some last all day, but every storm does end. So while you are praying and praying and praying and praying some more, try to picture the answer to that prayer in your head, because God will deliver you. It may not be as quickly as you would like. Believe me, I wanted my sore throat to be gone within a day, and it took several. But God eventually did heal my throat and my earaches. God did deliver me from that pain. God will deliver you from your storm as well. And on a macro scale, God will deliver us. These food shortages will end, and we will have our plenty back. The inflation will stop climbing at such an astronomical rate. Gas prices will come down even more than they already have. So try to picture what the end of your storm looks like. Try to picture what the outcome will be like when you no longer have to suffer, when you no longer have that pain, be it physical pain or emotional pain, when you are no longer going through that stressful situation. And folks, the fourth thing I would like to point out is to know that God will help you on His timing in accordance with His will. God will help you. I can promise you that. I can guarantee that. I know that because God has helped me with so much. But folks, I'm going to be honest with you. There were times where He was not helping me quick enough. He was not helping me when I wanted the help. He was not healing me when I wanted that healing. When my throat was on fire, I wanted that pain gone immediately. I wanted to wake up the next morning with no pain in my throat or my ears whatsoever. That wasn't God's plan. God's plan was for a gradual easing of the pain. I wanted to be healed right away. I did not want that fire in my throat. I did not want a sore throat. I did not want the earaches. I wanted to be better. Right now. God, heal me right now. Well, God healed me in His timing. But the key there is, in spite of my petulant attitude, God did heal me. He did heal my throat. First, he healed the fire. He made that fire go away so that I could eat and that I could drink. And then one ear actually felt completely better. I just had a regular sore throat and a regular earache in my other ear. And then the sore throat and earache was more like a twinge. Like I could tell there was something not quite right, but it wasn't really painful. And then eventually it was all better. The thing is, God did that according to his timing. I was reading through Job earlier, and after Job gets a lot of bad advice from his friends, God speaks and he addresses the whole group. And he basically tells them, have any of you created the earth? Did you lay the cornerstone? Can you measure the dimensions? What about the morning stars? And, he basically tells Job, show me that you can make yourself righteous. He challenges Job. God he's God. He created the entire universe. In the book of Job, he tells us that he created the behemoth, or the Leviathan, depending on which translation that you're reading. Isaiah tells us, as high as the heavens are above the earth, so high are his ways above ours. We don't know what God's plan is all the time. Now, in our previous episode, my co-host Sarah and I discussed some ways that can help you determine what God's will is. But God's will is God's will. God's timing is God's timing. It doesn't always match our timing. Just like when I wanted my throat healed right away, God said it's going to take a few days and it's going to be kind of a gradual thing instead of immediate overnight, boom, you're healed. On the macro scale, the food shortages, the inflation, the gas prices, the job losses the recession, these will all be fixed, but they're not going to be fixed overnight. So how do we maintain that hope? How do we continue having hope when having hope is hard? Well, folks, the first thing you want to do is to keep praying. Never stop praying. Be persistent, just like that widow before the judge. Keep praying. Keep asking God for what you need. He will answer you. If that judge who didn't fear God or respect man eventually gave that woman the justice she sought, imagine just how much greater God's response will be. A God who loves you and wants what's best for you. Imagine just how great his response will be for you when you keep praying and keep asking him. God will provide you that relief. The second thing, folks, is to look for relief where you can. Very rarely will things be instantly better. There will be a gradual relieving of your circumstances. And it's important to recognize when things are getting better, because that gives you that extra hope that, okay, God is listening to me. Things aren't better yet, but I can see they're improving. So recognize that improvement. The third thing, folks, is to try to picture what life will be like when the storm has ended. And hold on to that picture, because that is where God is bringing you. And again, I know firsthand that when you are in the middle of the storm, it is hard to picture the sun. But God is going to bring you to clear skies. He's going to bring you to that warmth and that light. So after you keep praying, after you recognize that improvement, picture the overall outcome after God has completely helped you. And finally, know that God is going to help you in accordance with his will and his timing. God will help you. It may not be as quick as you like, believe me, I know, but he will help you. Folks, as I'm recording this, I'm still a little weak. My symptoms, 99% gone, but there's still some of that lethargy and some of that weakness. I know that is also going to go away. God has healed me of all my other symptoms. It wasn't as quickly as I would have liked, but he did heal me. God is going to help you as well, ladies and gentlemen. I promise you, God is going to help you. He tells us as much. He promises as much. If you won't take my promise, take God's promise. God will help you in accordance with His will and His timing. The storm will end. It is important to maintain that hope, especially when having hope is hard. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And God bless.